Safe spaces, trigger warnings. They're built on the idea that the feelings of all must be protected, an act achieved by catering to the perpetually offended. But what happens when someone doesn't toe the line, and they have the audacity to have an unapproved opinion? Well, they get a one-way ticket out the front door. Join the Honey Badgers as we discuss the silence of safe spaces. As always, the show will be available for download after the broadcast at honeybadgerbrigade.com.
We've got a wonderful show today, guys. Today's topic is the silence of safe spaces. Oh gosh, the first story. Women are better leaders? The wonderful individuals at The Guardian are once again being intellectually dishonest with an article about two recent studies, with one suggesting that female-led companies make more money, and another suggesting that boards with women on them lead to more sustainable companies that focus on social and environmental issues. The consensus being that we need gender quotas for businesses to be more successful. Even if you assume that the results of these studies are correct, they would not suggest that women as a whole are better in leadership positions. What it does suggest is that some businesses might benefit from gender diversity in leadership. One thing this may not take into consideration is that women who've managed to get promoted to that level probably earned it. Women who are willing to sacrifice and work hard to get ahead end up in those positions, making the concept of gender quotas at the top potentially disastrous, as it may place less qualified women at the top who may not be as dedicated as their male counterparts. Women also have a tendency to choose jobs that deal with social and environmental issues, meaning that them being focused on that specifically would be beneficial to those companies. To say that women in general are better leaders is dishonest because it removes all the work those women did to get into those positions, and attributes all their efforts to what lies between their legs, making The Guardian far more sexist than the corporate world could ever be collectively. And discuss.
I just have one thing to say. You gotta love how feminism claims to be all about equality until the moment that women are supposed to be better at something or supposed to be superior at something, and then suddenly it's very, very politically correct to report that there's a difference. And if this had been an article about men being better leaders and men being more capable and making better choices and so on, there would have been public outrage. But you don't really see a lot of feminists objecting to this, do you? I bet they're probably touting it as fabulous news and very important information and so on. Because, equality. Equality means that women get to be superior, but men never do.
Well, one of the things that I noticed about these studies is that they don't necessarily suggest that women are better leaders. It does suggest that these companies do benefit financially from female leadership, but not just female leadership, more of a diverse, mixed workplace, basically with a mixed leadership and diversity at the top, meaning you have a diversity of ideas and things of that nature. And I think that makes a lot more sense. So I think it's dishonest for them to say that it's women specifically that is the cause of financial gain, that is cause for these companies becoming more sustainable as a whole.
Isn't that just typical? It really is typical. Feminists will look at a study that does not actually say the thing they want to say, and they'll report it that way. The study comes out and says that it's beneficial to have diversity in your company, and feminists will report it as women are better at X. That doesn't surprise me at all. And the news media will do the same thing simply because they do have a feminist leaning, and they demonstrated that over and over again just in their coverage of any non-feminist group that feminists have objected to. Where they turn around and slander us. So it's pretty obvious. Anytime you see anything like this, you actually have to go find the research and read it before taking anything that's reported about it as true. You really can't believe what you read anymore.
Moving on to the next one. Woman breaks into man's house, sexually assaults him, gets off with a slap on the wrist. A Texas woman by the name of, probably going to butcher this, Megan Holting, won't be facing felony charges after breaking into the home of her husband's friend and attempting to perform oral sex on him as he slept. The woman allegedly slipped in through an unlocked back door while still in her nightgown, slipped off all of her clothes with the exception of her panties, and began to sexually assault the sleeping man who refused her upon waking. She wouldn't take no for an answer and attempted to assault him again, which ended in him calling the police to forcibly remove the woman from his home. This is not her first run-in with the law, having been arrested before for public intoxication, theft, and assault. Even so, a Texas court has decided to drop all felony charges against her. So you can be assured that if you're a pretty woman in the state of Texas who breaks into a home and sexually assaults the man inside, you can get off scot-free. But this is an interesting story because you look into all of this to be a little more clear about what had taken place or what was described. A man wakes up and there's someone is sucking on his dick. Someone is performing oral sex on him, or at least attempting to, and they got their mouth over it. And so he says that he takes his phone to use that as a light and finds that his friend's wife is trying to do stuff to him, and he, of course, says, like, no, get off of me, that sort of thing. And she, like, has wrapped her legs around him and stuff like that. At one point or another, he's trying to get her off of him. He has to call the police to get her out. And this is not a felony charge, apparently. I don't know. You guys want to take this?
Oh, yeah. Just to clarify some things. So one, did you get let off with a slap on the wrist because of any kind of mental health or prior, like, any reason? Like
No, they didn't really give any reason. For some reason, I think they said that the judge threw it out.
Sure.
They didn't consider. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. They didn't say anything else.
And I guess because the fact that you had to call the cops to get this whole situation straightened out, it seems to me that it's not a case of an affair or something that's going on because they clearly don't care that it's public or whatever. So, because that was the other option, like maybe it's one of those, like, they actually are together because he said, not Beth, but his friend's wife. So it's like, he knows this woman. And it might have been that they were having an affair and somehow it turned ugly and cops were involved, but that doesn't necessarily seem to be the case either at all. No. Because if you're having an affair, you're wanting to keep that secret, and for a man to call the cops while, having his friend's wife suck him off, that's not really what happens in those situations. So, all right. So basically what we have here is the same old biological thing that actually men have almost admitted to a lot of times on television and things like that. It is a biological trigger for certain things being allowed for an older woman and a younger man that is not allowed for a younger woman and an older man. And I was actually watching this random, very feminist, like, channel thing on YouTube, and this dude brought it up. He's like, I understand the hypocrisy within me that I would give this 15-year-old guy high fives all day every day for having sex with this high school teacher, because I remember myself and I wanted to do that. But if there's a 24-year-old guy having sex with, like, 17-year-old girl, fuck that guy, I want to beat his ass. And it's like, whoa. It's like you realize you have a hypocrisy, and that is a hypocrisy. There was a recent case where a judge called this dude was like the teenage boy had sex with his teacher, and whenever it was in the court case for rape or in whatever it's called, the statutory rape and things like that, judge said good on you for getting a piece of that candy or something. Like, he literally called her candy. So I mean, yeah, she was hot, but basically there's this idea that younger boys having sex with older females is completely okay when they're on that cusp of 15, 16, 17, where it's kind of becomes acceptable to have sex. It's with people that age. While if you have a woman or a girl who's interested, a young woman, 15, 16, who's interested in being sexually promiscuous, somehow it's like, well, she doesn't fully understand the ramifications, and she might think that she wants it, but later it will come back to bite her. And my favorite, that somehow that person in a position of power is seducing them with that power, and making them basically not know what they're doing. Which, I mean, then why doesn't that count in the exact opposite case of female teacher and a younger boy. It's just this weird thing that we have as a species that a lot of even guys have because of whatever issues. I'm not really sure. I have to think about it from my, psychology and neuroscience cap on. But whenever we see a younger woman and an older male, no. But a younger male and older woman, perfectly fine, even though there's the exact same age brackets. So that is very much going on everywhere, and extends into women raping men, because the idea is that a man always wants sex, that he always wants to be whatever woman is, no matter what she looks like, no matter what the circumstances, he's going to be happy for getting sex. And it's like, yeah, no, that's not the case. But because a lot of people don't realize that men feel violated, and they think about it as, hey, some woman that I like and that I approve of in the situation that I approve of is sucking my dick randomly. That's great. And no, I think put yourself in a position of actual vulnerability, of actual men being abused, because that's what we're talking about. We're not talking about something that they enjoy doing. And also, then why aren't we talking about the younger thing about girls? But that's something else. I realize it has nothing to do with the discussion at hand, but there's still this idea that men want sex, and no matter when it happens, they're going to be grateful for it.
I think I want to speak to what's keeping that attitude in place, the attitude that keeps male victims of female perpetrators marginalized. Because you think, for the record, if this was reversed, if the sexes on this were reversed, and a female had awakened to find a guy assaulting her like that, and the cops hadn't done anything, or they had simply, removed the person and then no charges filed, or any variation on do not, go directly to jail, do not actually even get a fair trial, and so on, the outrage would be tangible. It'd be in the streets. And especially if it made national news, there would be protests. There would be people taking up the cause. There would be hashtags with the victim's name if the victim's name was released, and if not, there would be a pseudonym for the victim, just so that they could have a hashtag. There would not be this quiet, the news reports it and then people discuss it a little bit on shows like ours, and that's it. But in this case, if we were to actually be able to speak to the same feminist groups that would have, screaming temper tantrums where the sex is reversed, they'd blame men for it. They'd turn around and blame patriarchal attitudes. And it is what they do every time there is a debate on this topic. And when they do it, they are either wrong because they don't understand their own movement, or they are lying through their teeth. For the last 30 years at least, possibly longer, but I can at least trace it back to Mary Koss 30 years ago, or 20 years ago, fighting for the Violence Against Women Act. They've actually been actively suppressing data on victims of female perpetrators. Not just male victims, but also female victims, but in general, all victims. They've done all of their research with rape defined as only when the victim is penetrated, in order to exclude all rape victims that are forced to penetrate their perpetrator. And that they've been pushing this narrative on sexual misconduct based on that marginalization for all of that time. It was used to get the original version of the Violence Against Women Act passed. It's been used for things like changing the definition of rape to include everything except victims of female perpetrators who don't see fit to penetrate their victims. And just another point, a female perpetrator really has very little purpose in penetrating her victim. Unless her goal is to inflict an experience instead of steal one, it's really pointless for her to penetrate the victim. So the majority of female perpetrators that want to commit the most heinous act are not going to be counted, and it's been a goal. And actually, Allison and I have a video, I think it was Men's Rights versus Feminist Rape Culture, explained using puzzle pieces. And Allison did the majority of the work on that video. She did all of the artistic work, all of the description and everything. But at the end of it, there's a phone call that I had with the CDC that in that phone call, I was discussing with them their statistics on sexual violence, and I specifically point blank asked one of the researchers who had worked on the 2012 National Intimate Partner and Sexual Violence Survey why they defined rape the way they defined rape, why they used forcibly penetrated only in their definition and excluded being made to penetrate. And she couldn't give me an answer. She floundered. She flailed. She made excuses. She actually told a couple of lies in the process about whether or not that this had been previously studied and how much research there had been on it and so on. But she couldn't actually she couldn't tell me because she didn't have a good reason. And that's basically when you see cases like this. You know, if it was 50 years ago and you saw a case like this, feminists might maybe have a point about blaming patriarchal attitudes. Maybe. But seeing a case like this today, after decades of research in which they deliberately ignored evidence of female perpetration and deliberately obscured statistics on female perpetration in order to present a male on female violence narrative and exploit that narrative for power and money, you really can't blame patriarchal attitudes for that. That's all on feminism. They are now 100% responsible because they had the power to change it. They had the platform, they had the podium, they had all of the information. If it had been a goal of theirs to improve the situation for male victims and for all victims of female perpetrators, it would have been accomplished by now. And since it hasn't, it follows that that was not their goal.
Protein World is pretty based. The British weight loss company came under fire after a recent ad campaign featuring an athletic woman in a bikini, asking the question, "Are you beach body ready?" This, of course, was enough to trigger body-positive feminists who vandalized the ads in public transit and sent a petition to the company asking that the ad be pulled. A petition with over 53,500 signatures. They also started hashtags and open protests against the company for promoting what they believe is body shaming. Now, most companies would fold to this kind of pressure and apologize to the poor triggered feminists. But the awesome people at Protein World didn't take any of their shit and openly expressed how few fucks they gave on social media, tweeting out responses such as, quote, "Why make your insecurities our problem? Winky face." And haven't you heard? Sales have tripled, and I just got a bonus. Well, there you have it, folks. This is the tale of how a company not only stood up to this kind of bullshit, but also made a cool $1 million in the span of 4 days. Well done, guys. Well done. One update is that apparently they did finally have to pull the ad. Apparently, I'm trying to remember what organization eventually had it pulled. But yeah, it did get eventually pulled because people caved to the pressure, but it wasn't Protein World that pulled the ad. They weren't going to take any of this crap. And I gotta say, I'm impressed.
You know, minor update to that. As I understood it, what I read about that was that it wasn't actually pulled, but just the ad cycle itself came to an end. That's just what I found out about it. So I'm not 100%. I can't confirm that right off bat for you, but that's what I just saw that a couple of days ago.
That's also what I'd heard is that the essentially they'd rented space on the buses for a specific period of time, and that time was up. So. Okay.
Well, personally, I mean, you said body positive feminists. No, I think what you mean is fit shaming feminists, because anyone who's actually pro body positivity will realize that people like me who naturally look skinny and don't have big boobs that everyone seems to be so crazy about, we not only get fit shamed all the time, especially in the recent society, like the way society switched and shifted towards just being really judgmental of people and their lifestyles and the way they look. On top of that, it's already an oppressive environment in a certain way we already feel guilty, and like we can't talk about being skinny or about things that skinny people problems or whatever the fuck. We can't really talk about the fact that we do feel oppressed and shamed by feminists and others for the way we look, because that'll, it's like, oh, what are you whining about? You already look good. And it's like, it's just a really big fucking mess. And as somebody who has experienced it and frequently does experience it, it sucks. And it's like, on one hand, I completely understand that nobody should be made fun of for the way they look, especially when they can't help it, or they have things in their life that they don't have the right tools, or they have stressors, or whatever the freaking reason is. It doesn't matter. Nobody should really necessarily be made fun of for their looks, but sometimes it's going to freaking happen. But what I'm talking about is this institutionalization of a massive group of people looking down on those who happen to care about the way they look for their health and happen to luck out genes wise and what they do with their diet, and who actually have to work hard and deny themselves things in order to look good, because you know what, that's better for health and for a variety of other things, and who cares, it's our choice. So it's just the whole switch to shaming that. It's like, why do we have to shame somebody else to feel better about ourselves? Why can't we just be okay about everybody and realize that everybody is fortunate and unfortunate in some ways, and that everybody has some room to improve? And let's just love each other and go jog together. I don't know.
I think some of the biggest bullies among social justice warriors have to be those who call themselves body positive. They're everything but body positive. The idea of thin shaming and the idea of fitness shaming is basically a limitation. You have to be our kind of body in order to fit body positivity, or you don't count. And in the name of opposing shaming, they dump more vitriol and more hatred on people for not looking like themselves than they have ever encountered. And I can, like Anna, I can actually attest to that. During my 4 years in high school, I had to develop a pattern. It always made me late to the lunch line or late to the location where I went to lunch, specifically because I could not use the restroom after lunch. Because if I used the restroom after lunch, I got accused of going in there to purge because I was thin. I used to be, when I was younger and had the killer metabolism, I used to be as thin as Anna. And of course now I'm older and I don't have that, and am still thinner than all of my friends. And I get, even now that I'm not like demonstrably fat, I still get, oh, I hate you because you're so thin. Oh, how dare you. It just pisses me off to look at you because you have it so easy. And of course, I can't really explain to people that I don't have it as easy as I used to, and I actually have to watch my weight now. And I do it for very valid reasons. In my family, getting overweight means diabetes, and I don't want to become a diabetic. And I don't want to have the heart. My father has had 2 heart attacks in the last couple of years. I don't want to do that. I don't want to put my family through that. It was terrifying for us to see him go through that. And it was even worse for him. He had to have heart surgery. And just the idea that it's okay to shame people for having that concern and that consideration and making the effort to protect themselves from those problems. It's just, it's damnable almost. But, it would have been really admirable for people who have that attitude to try to create an environment that is supportive of people treating each other with kindness and decency. Like, obviously, you should not make fun of people for being fat. That's mean and it's stupid, and it's really dysfunctional. And it completely kills your ability to relate to other people. But the fact that one person has done that to an individual does not give that individual the right to hate on another person for not looking like them. It doesn't become a meanness, pay it forward. All that does is create a situation where people lose the ability to relate to each other as human beings and to find community with each other and to actually build something better out of their interaction with each other. And all we end up doing is knocking each other down, and nobody ever achieves anything better out of it. And it's like a hijacking. This movement, this so-called supportive movement, has been hijacked by the very female behavior of taking out one's own self-image issues on the people around oneself. So these people are just basically substituting dysfunction for dysfunction, and in doing what they're doing, they're actually making it a negative thing to encourage people to protect themselves from harm that comes from the health issues that come from being overweight. They're actually damaging people. They're hurting people in the name of protecting them. Imagine if this was done with other behaviors and other circumstances that are unhealthy. Like, it used to be the coolest thing if you smoked, right? It wasn't just a thing people did. It was flashy and debonair, I guess. I remember that because there's a poster now. It's actually considered acceptable to shame smokers. Imagine if smokers turned around and came up with an inhalant positivity movement, and basically said, well, we're going to shame everybody who doesn't smoke because it makes us feel bad that they're healthier than we are, and that they're lording their healthiness over us, and shame on you for that. So let's have an inhalant positivity movement. It exactly the same kind of dysfunction as having a fat positivity movement. As body acceptance, the limitation of that should simply be that we're not mean to people over their bodies at all.
Just a final thought out of me on this one. The one thing that makes me a little afraid, just looking in the future sense over this stuff, is that we're seeing all this fit shaming, fat shaming, all this. Really, what we're seeing a lot of people who just aren't engaged in some healthy lifestyle habits as far as nutrition, exercise, and things like that. And it's turning into this little micro war, or whatever you want to call it, in which people are fighting to be unhealthy. And what scares me is, in the future, I think what we're going to end up seeing is we're going to see a shit ton of deaths that will occur behind this kind of stuff, be it from death by heart disease or, as mentioned earlier, things like diabetes and all of that kind of stuff. And these people who are so adamant right now, not realizing that their own health is at stake, they're going to want to then turn around and have everyone else solve their problem. And it's at that point, it'll have been too late. And that is just a potential scenario that does kind of frighten me a little bit, because everyone else can kind of see it coming. Now, it doesn't mean that everyone has to look the same or have this, any kind of chiseled body. No, it just means practice some basic stuff. And that's always been the thing that bothers me. It's that, sometimes you hear someone go, why am I so fat? And then you see what they're eating, and they're specifically making an effort to not take care of their own health or take care of their own body. And it's like, well, that's probably why. From everything that I've learned, everything I've experienced in this, it's that you have a surprising amount of control, and you don't even have to invest a lot of time into it. And I would hope that these people realize that it's not as hard as it seems. You don't even have to make huge dramatic changes in your lifestyle. It's just little stuff. My favorite example for all this is, like I said, I'm a really slender guy, like Hannah is, but for me, I have the direct opposite problem, where I just burn through calories super fast without doing much of anything. So in order to keep from losing weight, I have to constantly be packing food in. And, there's a whole different problem that other people don't talk about. But for me, maintaining weight is very, very difficult. And then there are other people who just put on that weight super fast. But, I get out here and I do my thing and I cycle. Well, my wife isn't a small lady. she's kind of big. Like, she's very, very plump, but she still gets out there and she's still doing the same amount of miles. It's not like she's dragging her ass or anything like that. No, she's got damn near the same amount of mileage put out there in cycling that I have. And she still, is still a bigger lady. She's just a lot stronger now. And there's different, things or effects that come from that, being able to have more spring in your step. It's just a lot easier to eat healthier, and it's very, very subtle. And it's not like doing any of this stuff. It's stuff that disrupts your day. It quite literally is, hey, take 20 minutes and go take a damn walk. Instead of, eating a giant bag of Doritos and just kind of sitting around afterwards. No, if you want to eat that stuff, you can eat that stuff. You just have to go use the energy. You have to utilize it, and this is all stuff that I've had to learn. It's just that we've got people who are engaged in very unhealthy life practices, and it's kind of biting them in the ass. You can, in fact, have it all. You just need to do 10, 20 minutes worth of homework and realize that there's no quick fix. There's no take a pill and suddenly all these things are solved. No, it's just make a tiny change in your life, and I promise it won't disrupt it, and you will feel the difference. And for me, to kind of close this up, it was sitting down and doing this, and 2 months later, I turned around and looked at myself, and there was a person that I didn't recognize that I had never seen before. And it was a really intoxicating moment. It was like, holy cow, this is amazing. My only regret, and this is something I told people not too long ago, I said my only regret is that I didn't discover how much I enjoyed this stuff sooner in my life, and how good it makes me actually feel. Not even for, just, oh, he's attractive. I actually don't care about that stuff. I like feeling good and healthy. That part is really satisfying. And I would hope that people spend more time thinking about, well, I want to feel good. What are the things that I can do to actually make me feel good and have a long, healthy life? That's the direction I would hope people go, instead of us having to deal with a serious, major, health crisis some years down the line. It's just a question of when. It's not a question of if.
Well, now that we've gone pretty long and
moving along, get
yes,
it going. Next topic.
Oh gosh, here we go. Wolf whistling is sexual assault. This writes itself, doesn't it? In an article that reads like you've entered an episode of The Twilight Zone, Simon Kellner of The Independent suggests that whistling at an attractive woman is a form of sexual assault. He describes the story of Poppy Smart, a 23-year-old career woman, and upon turning the corner of the street that she usually walks, she was greeted by, gasp, wolf whistles. Because as we all know, all it takes to reduce an affluent professional down to an object is an acknowledgement that they are attractive, and that some people are immature. This act of audible assault was followed by a man saying, "Morning, love." Oh my gosh, this right here can truly be compared to ass grabbing. I mean, really, that poor woman, how dare that vile construction worker tell her good morning? But even the writer admits that such an act is, quote, relatively harmless, unquote. In fact, the exact quote is, quote, "Of course, in the grand scheme of things, this is a relatively harmless offense, but I think it is a form of sex crime nonetheless. And Miss Smart, by going to the police and making sure that she publicized the fact, has done all women a service," unquote. What a shitlord. Truly, Miss Smart is a heroine of our time, reporting this act to law enforcement. Well done, Poppy. I'm sure you'll be back to walking the streets with overpriced lattes in no time. Maybe next time these men will think twice about whistling at people or telling them good morning, because such an offense is far too much for any woman to bear. No, really, there's a woman named Poppy Smart who usually walks by a certain area, and she turns the corner. Man says, "Good morning, love," and somebody whistles at her, and that, the writer believes, it should be prosecuted.
You know,
Fuck everyone hating on wolf whistling and street complimenting and fuck you all right where you stand or sit or whatever. Just especially if you're part of the body positivity movement. I think the whole idea that we're not allowed to notice and actually give a shout out to somebody who has made an effort to look attractive is bullshit. Now, granted, there are people who can be assholes. I've had people shout things at me on the street. Actually, other women that are really, really not nice, like really not nice. And hey, you know what? I didn't die. I didn't like fall down and go into a terrible seizure and melt into the sidewalk and cease to exist and all that stuff. But one of the nicest experiences is to have dressed up and gone out, in a short skirt or just a nice outfit and have somebody that has no reason to give a rat's ass about you to give you the compliment of not only noticing but boisterously shouting out that you are attractive. And from the perspective of a socially awkward person who didn't necessarily always attract a lot of compliments and so on growing up because I was a wallflower and hid behind my camera. It was really nice to have that experience. And if other women don't necessarily want to engage with people who give them compliments on the street or who shout at them on the street or who maybe are inarticulate about giving compliments, maybe they're a little awkward and that's the only way that they know how, that's your business. Just keep walking. You don't have to take it away from everybody else. So like I said, fuck you, all of you who have to turn this into something bad when the vast majority of the time it's not. And if you really have to offer up some sort of counter to it, if you really have to feel victimized by something that really isn't victimizing you, turn around and tell them to fuck off. But don't sit there and act like you have to be the queen of everybody else's social interaction. It's just your problem. It's not everybody's problem, and not everyone agrees with you.
If you enjoyed the contents of this podcast, please consider supporting our show. You can become our patron at www.patreon.com/honeybadgerradio. This show is made possible by the contributions of listeners such as yourself. Thank you for your donation.